Hey guys, welcome back to Scar Stories. My name is Nicole Golden and I'm the host. And if you haven't had a chance yet, go to NicoleGolden.org and check out my free Praying Scared prayer journal. I'd love for you to connect with me via that way and enjoy that free resource. And today I have a new friend of mine. I consider is scaring all the people. I consider her a friend because I've been following her for so long. I said I'm one of her like first couple hundred followers on Instagram. Now she's over to like what? You have like 12,000. Who knows?
I don't know. You know what? Hero today, zero tomorrow.
Well, listen, I know. Isn't that how it works on the internet these days? They love you say something and then they all leave it. But this is Heather Palacios. I said, how do you say your last name? She doesn't even know. Her husband's Cuban. So we're just going to say white girl Palacios.
Yeah.
But you can find her online at, show us your shirt, Wondherful on Instagram and wondherful.com.
And Twitter and Facebook and Snapchat.
Oh, she's everywhere. But I love this woman because I was telling her a little bit when we first met, like literally 5 minutes ago. I said, back about 8 or 9 years ago, well, my husband and I became lead pastor about 10 years ago. And that's when I was diagnosed with my anxiety, depression, borderline. But about a year or so afterwards, I was just looking for community, couldn't find any because I was young and had all these mental illnesses and had a weird sense of humor that I didn't know what to do with. And I stumbled across Leading and Loving It. And I think that's how I stumbled across you, Heather, because I know you've been connected with them for a while. Mm-hmm. And started following her and loved you flip-flop back and forth, and we're going to talk about that in a second, but you share your journey of mental illness and suicide attempt and all those things, but then you also put up some hysterical things, and I die. And I've stolen so much of your stuff. I don't know that I've always even like said it was yours, which my bad. I'm better at that now. But I was
sharing is caring.
Exactly. I was like, that's the kind of person I want to be. I want to be honest and hysterical. And so this is like a dream come true to have you on here. So Heather, the first question I want to ask you, we're going to get into your story in a second, but we're going to warm up. We're going to warm up to it. So
warm ups.
I know, warm up. So I just said that you have an awesome sense of humor. Have you always had an awesome sense of humor, or is that something you developed, after going through your mental health crisis and those sorts of things as almost like I don't think it's a coping mechanism, but it's not a bad coping. I feel like I've gotten a better sense of humor after walking through my diagnosis. So is that something you've always had, or is it something that you've kind of developed since you went through your trauma?
That's a great question. I come from a family of sarcastic, funny, witty people. But I didn't start to get intentional with it until social media. Okay. I recognized on social media as God was allowing me to amass virtual relationships on social media that I started off broad and wide with just putting, vomit on there all the time. And then I really decided to get more intentional about my social media, which allowed me to narrow my vision of it. And it is to either encourage people to not give up or to make people laugh until they fart.
Yeah. Yes. I was so hoping this is what you would give me today. Perfect.
Can I say that on a women's podcast?
Do it. Well, and here's the thing though. We have dudes that join us too, which I love.
Oh, all right. Well, they'll appreciate that.
I know we just got a bunch more guys following us and listening to us because you said fart. So it's perfect. I love it. I heard someone say once, I went to a conference and he was sharing his story and he was like, he started, as he was sharing his story, it was so intense. And then he started making all these jokes and he was like, we have to laugh at our trauma. And anytime I go and speak anywhere now, or am I there? Are we together?
Yeah, now you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was saying this guy shared his story was so intense and he shared like how he has to laugh at his trauma. And anytime I go and share my story, I always tell people like, you are welcome to laugh with me because if we're not laughing, we're crying. And so do you believe in the power of like laughing at trauma? I feel like if it's your trauma, you're allowed to laugh at it and make, not make light of it, but make you feel a little bit more comfortable with it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, when I had the opportunity to go and share or speak It's very heavy. It's deep. It's traumatic. It's stricken. And that cannot be the audience's takeaway.
Yeah.
I would feel horrible if they all left like, we're never gonna make it, you know. So I always try to find a bipolar feng shui with my multiple personalities to take people on a roller coaster ride, where they're up and they're down, up and down, up and down, and maybe we might twist and turn, but we'll not fall out of the seat, and I will get them to the end.
That's perfect. Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. And people love roller coasters. I mean, we both live in Florida. You're quite a bit more down south than I am. I'm in Tampa, so I'm in between Disney World and Busch Gardens. People love a good ride. They love a good thrill. So where are you from originally? Because like I can't figure out where your accent is from.
Well, it's British, but I'm just kidding. It's not British.
It doesn't sound British.
I know.
I was like, maybe she's like, I don't know. Anyway, now you know I'm gullible, so don't be mean to me.
Okay, sorry. It's Chicago.
Okay, Chicago. I hear it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's that nice, rich, nasally, thick Chicago accent.
And then you're married to a Cuban, so what do your boys sound like? I'm intrigued. And I know you have 2 boys, so how freaky is that?
Yeah.
Like I'm a stalker.
No, that's great. You were outside my bedroom window last night?
Right, exactly.
I thought I saw your silhouette, so that's awesome.
I'm in your garage right now.
Woo!
I know.
No, the kids, they didn't get my accent, thank goodness, because it's really hard to get rid of, not for lack of trying. Yeah. And my husband, he is 100% Cuban, but has been in South Florida his whole life, so he doesn't have one.
Okay. Fair enough. I was hoping for something interesting. All right. Tell us your
Sorry to let you down.
I know. Seriously. I needed a British, Cuban, Chicago something. Okay. So tell us your story. We're ready for this. I'm ready to hear it.
Oh gosh. All right. Well, it started when I was 8. Wow. And so that would have been in 1981. We were living on 254 South College Drive, Bowling Green, Ohio. And I wrote on my little butterfly stationery a letter and put it in an envelope and mailed it to my grandparents in Chicago. I was living in Ohio at that time. And the nature of the letter was that I wanted to take my life. And so that was very young, but that was also, that really predated any mental health movements, advocacy, causes, awareness. And my parents just did the best they could. They called the church.
Yeah.
And so a deacon came over and he prayed with me in the living room, and we just moved on from there. And then in middle school, I just didn't want to live again. And so I wrote a 10-page suicide letter on legal pad, put it on the kitchen counter, was looking through the kitchen drawer to find a knife when the doorbell rang.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, it was the Orchid Bug Man. He was there to spray for bugs. I'm like, yo, the timing.
I know.
Really?
You're in the middle of something. Yeah.
And he had to come inside, and he walked through the kitchen where there was a knife and there was a yellow note, several pieces of paper. But he did what he had to do. And by the time he left, my family had come home, and that kind of threw off that plan. An interesting factoid is last year I was going through some storage bins and I found that letter.
Really?
From it's from when I was 14 years old. It has the date on the top. It's in my little, remember when we used to do cursive?
Yes.
It's about 9 pages. I haven't had the mental strength to read it yet.
I was about to ask that. Yeah.
Because I have a kid that age. I think it's just hits too close to home. But I found it. Yeah. And then just moved on from there. In college, I was dating a guy, and it was a very dysfunctional relationship. I desperately wanted him to put a ring on it. He said, I will, after 5 years or so with him, I'll never marry you. And I couldn't handle that. So I took a bottle of pills and tried to kill myself, and was taken to the ER. They're able to obviously keep me going. And then after that, probably the biggest turning point was as a pastor's wife. This is kind of what put me, I think, on the Share Speak map. Yeah. Was that as a pastor's wife of a Baptist church, I was found in a parking lot killing myself in my
Wow.
car. And I was so almost like a rabid animal. I could not be subdued, much like the demoniac and the Gerasenes in the Book of Mark. So they had to knock me out and took me to a hospital, treated my injuries, and they put me in a psych ward, and they locked me up in a room by myself.
Wow. Wow.
So that was the turning point. July 30th, 2000, laying there as a pastor's wife, wanting to die and failing at it.
Mm.
Pissed at God because I tried to die and I couldn't.
Mm.
And now, how do you re-enter society?
Yeah.
As a psych ward locked up, crazy, public record crazy pastor's wife.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So
real quick, just a pause. So how long had you guys been in the pastorate when you attempted in the car?
well, as he was a volunteer deacon pastor for a few years. I was on staff there. But as a married couple, we had been married for 1 year.
Okay. And was it just the pressure of?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, at that point in 2000, I mean, I have this history of wanting to die.
Yeah.
And trying to, but no diagnosis and no medication. And it was horrible,
Yeah.
And then to try to reconcile that demon with trying to be a, goody two shoes pastor's wife.
Word.
There's no way. I wanted out. And
Word.
I knew divorce wasn't an option. So I was like, I'll just kill myself.
Yeah. 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 I feel this. And when I had first emailed you, you're like, our stories are similar. So I'm like, I feel it. So, I mean, okay. So do you have kids at this point, or no, you've just been married a year. So no children.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in the psych ward. How long are you in the psych ward for?
I was in for 2 days. Back then it was shady. I mean, it was like ratchet conditions. They've come a long way with dignifying these types of facilities. But back then, 20 years ago,
I can't imagine.
They threw a sheet over me and put me in the hall and left me there because there wasn't a room. It was like an animal,
Yeah, yeah.
But they released me on the contingency that I would be under the care of a state-appointed psychologist. And thankfully, I found a Christian one. And so I decided that night in the psych ward that if God is not going to let me die, then I am going to help people live. I
love it. And
that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years.
I love it. That is powerful. I have chills.
Yeah.
I never, for me, a little bit with my story is, so I'm like the perfect goody two shoes child. I grew up in a very legalistic, fundamental home where, I did everything right to get everybody's approval. And I mean, I'm so good. I have babies named after me. I have like 3 babies named after me. I kid you not. And just this great person. And then my husband and I get married, and I literally have an emotional mental breakdown. Like everything just collapses on me. And like I'm getting steak knives out to kill myself. I'm just an absolute wreck. I'm having these episodes where I'm hurting myself. I'm hurting my husband. He's having to pin me to the ground, all these things. And so finally I get in with a counselor and I get diagnosed with anxiety, depression, and borderline. But there was this sense of like, okay, I'm 25, I married a 31-year-old. He's a lead pastor. What am I supposed to do with this? Because even 10 years ago, no one was talking about it. Like nobody was talking about mental illness very much. Nobody was, especially nobody like in the forefronts of leadership,
Right.
And so I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? And I'll never forget, we went to my brother's wedding in Texas, and I was in Matt Chandler's church, and he started talking about Paul's thorn in the flesh potentially being emotional or mental. And I just fell apart. Like, this makes so much sense. And if God didn't choose to heal him, maybe he's not going to heal me. And by heal, I mean, maybe he's not going to take away this anxiety, depression, and borderline. But maybe instead what he's going to do is he's going to allow me to have to face this day after day and lean into the truths of the gospel, that God loves me no matter what, that when he looks at me, he sees Jesus Christ, and then use my story to impact others. So I love what you said. If he didn't allow me to die, then he's going to help me keep people living. That is powerful. So like how did you move back into society then? Like how did you, I mean,
Right.
did your husband resign? Did he continue at the church? Like how did you move back into things?
Yeah, I mean, it was hard and it was awkward, and I always want to make sure that I say that, the hero of my story, and there's even more um, to add to it as recently as 2020. But those are my dogs. I'm sorry. They love the mail lady
And
and want to kill her at the same time. So,
I get it. I get it.
yeah. So I'm not the hero of my story. I don't ever want anybody to think that. The hero of my story is my husband Raul, because
Mm.
it's one thing to be crazy, it's another to stay married to it.
Mm.
And even though I've got the public ministry, he doesn't.
Yeah.
And so no one knows what he has gone through.
Yeah.
And I will say that on some days it was way worse than what I have gone through, depending on where I was at. So to his credit, he has stayed with me. I think there was some points where unequivocally a pastor would have said justifiably, this is toxic, I need to leave this. But my husband has chosen to stay. And I'm eternally indebted. There's nothing I can do to make up for that depth of loyalty, because he has seen, the scene that he drove up to, I was murdering myself in my car.
Mm-hmm.
You don't premarital counseling does not address those types of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seminary doesn't.
Yeah.
So to stick with it he's the hero. And
did he go to any kind of therapy to kind of, where I was going to have to work through those images even?
Yep. Whenever people reach out to me for anything related to Raul and I always say, I needed counseling, but he needed counseling.
Yes.
And he didn't need counseling because he's crazy.
Right.
He needed counseling because he's married to it. And where's that book?
Yeah, exactly.
Where's that PDF?
Yeah.
And on top of that, often when you are in a marriage with somebody that is mentally afflicted, it's a lot of times a one-way dialogue. Yeah. I'm throwing up to him, but he doesn't get the luxury to always throw up to me.
Yeah.
Counselor, he does.
Yes, 100%.
That is a one-way relationship where he pays that therapist to listen to him.
Yes.
And that is so important.
Yes. Yes. Well, it's so funny you say that, because I just yesterday, I tape these podcasts ahead of time, and I interviewed my husband yesterday. We did a relationship series about a year ago at our church, and he told a little bit of his story, but I realized it was like, he's never told, the mental illness side of it is my story, but exactly being married to it, that's his story. And he had never told it from start to finish. And so I interviewed him yesterday, and I was just like, you have permission to say everything. Like, I don't want you holding back, because there are people who are married to people with mental illness that, as Kay Warren says, it's a lose-lose situation. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to function. And so, and same thing, we tell people that all the time. If you're in a relationship with someone who's mentally ill, you need to get into counseling, because you've got to be able to process how they're making you feel. And then you also have to know how to help them when they're in their spiral, like how to recognize triggers for them, how to speak truth over them, like how to be there for them. So same thing. I love that.
And to have boundaries.
100%.
Because the one thing that I've seen haunt marriages, or where I'll see the enemy really try to encroach on the relationship to end it, is it's just not sustainable for the healthy spouse. For my husband, will I come home and Heather will be dead?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you live like that?
Yeah.
How do you raise kids like with you? So, he has had to have boundaries. And the biggest boundary Raul has had to have, that I tell people, is he can't save me.
Wow.
And so he has that boundary with me. He does his job to love me as a husband. God does his job to love me, to save me.
Wow. I just want people to let that sink in for a second, because I think it's so easy when, you are the caregiver of someone who's mentally ill, whether you're married to that person or the parent of that person, like you cannot fix them. They have to make the choice to do the hard work to fix. But yes, you have to love. And I think I love how you said like your husband is the hero of the story, because I feel like mine is the same with mine. Like I tell people all the time, I didn't understand how much Jesus Christ loved me and what that love looked like until my husband loved me, like at my absolute worst. And then I was like, wait a minute, this is what Jesus does for me every day,
Right.
So,
Right.
but chills, yeah, you cannot save someone.
Right.
Woo!
Right.
So now you said something interesting. You said something happened in 2012. What happened do you mind sharing what happened in
No, 2020.
2020, last year?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, girl. Is this too
Yeah.
soon or can we share?
No. Actually, I shared it at Leading and Loving It.
Okay.
So it's on YouTube. It's out there now. But
All right.
I mean, 2020 has just gone to show me that the struggle is still real. 2020, at the onset of the pandemic, they started to really mandate this idea of quarantining and isolation and shelter in place and social distancing. And all of those are great to protect you, from a physical virus, but all of those are deadly if you have a mental affliction and you're not in a good place. Isolate. Listen, I don't kill myself in front of you. I kill myself in private.
Yeah.
And just yesterday, I heard an interview. There's one school district that has had 19 suicides already.
I saw you posted that on your Instagram, and I felt physically ill.
Yeah. That is, that's.
And I saw it said the youngest was 9 years old. 9. Did I see that correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So isolation is a big, big tool that the enemy uses. And Christine Kane spoke at our church last weekend, and just got a chance to quickly dialogue with her about some of this stuff. And I was telling her, because she was asking me about the suicide as it pertains to the pandemic. I said, listen, I'm not trying to say something to go up against the public health and the government.
No.
But I will say this: the Bible itself has cases of biblical, real people who, when they were isolated, were suicidal, or at the very least wanted to die and give up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Elijah.
Yep.
Moses.
Yep.
Jonah.
Yep.
So it's not just me blowing smoke.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you are in a mentally afflicted season and you are isolated, the devil is all over that, because he seeks to kill, steal, and destroy.
Yeah. Well, in Proverbs 18:1 in the ESV says, he who isolates himself is not wise. And that's why.
Yeah.
We never meant to live on our own. We were meant to live in community.
Right. So in April, I was just in a bad place. My family was out of town. I was home alone. And every thing on my calendar had been canceled. And I just looked at my calendar on my iPhone month after month after month, and there was nothing and nothing and nothing. And I was home alone, and I'm a mentally afflicted person. And I unfortunately just started to hear, if you took your life, you would leave Raw without a wife. But at the same time, he probably could remarry with someone more normal. And I also started to entertain the thought in my head that, your kids would, they would lose a mom. But, did you ever think that maybe you're kind of an embarrassing mom? I mean, you go around talking about suicide, and that was it. That was it. And so I made a plan, and I went in the garage, and I went in the car. I turned on the car, and in my heart, I started to hear something that was loud and strong, because God knew he couldn't get through to me in my mind. And my heart just kept saying, Heather, you got to practice what you preach. Practice what you preach. You have always told people in this condition they need to call somebody. And that was absolutely right. So I got out of the car, got out of the garage. I went inside, and I called a lifeline for pastors.
I can't. I'm sorry. I just have to have whew.
Yeah.
I mean, I love what you say. He couldn't get through to your mind. He had to speak to your heart. I mean, that's so powerful. Because I think sometimes, our minds, it's those verses in Romans that talk about like we wrestle not against flesh and blood. Like there is some deep stuff that goes on. And I'm not saying demonic, like, you know,
Right.
when we've accepted Christ as our savior, we can't be demonically, you know,
Right.
but I'm
Possessed.
saying like,
Right.
you know, because of the fall, we're broken mentally, we're broken physically, we're broken emotionally. And so sometimes, yeah, the only way for God to get through us is just like, you know, our hearts. And wow, that is so powerful. How
And you know, and I do love, I love God with all of my heart.
100%.
And he knows that, and I know that.
Yeah.
And that's why he's a real and a good God, because in that moment he's like, all right, plan B.
Yeah.
She loves you with all of my heart, so I know she'll hear me there.
Yes. I love that. I love that. And it just goes to show how God continually pursues us. Like he never gives up on us. We're never too far, too broken, too whatever. He's constantly pursuing us. How did okay, I'm gonna try to say it. Raul. Did I say that correct? Raul?
Raul.
Raul. How did Raul and your boys react to that? How did they?
Raul had suspected something. I had turned off my phone and I had turned off my location. And I wasn't responding to text messages. So they actually came back early.
Yeah.
And he asked the kids to stay in the car. He said, let me run into the,
because he wasn't sure.
House.
He wasn't sure what it, yeah.
I regret it. But you know, I've also realized a lot from that God has allowed me to share with people, and because I'm still living, I can.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, I think it's so powerful to let people, I think sometimes the worst thing we can do and I got the whole mental health advocate from you. I first saw that you were like mental health advocate, and that's what I started calling myself that several years ago. But I think the worst thing we can do, especially as people in the church, is to say that, you know, if you pray hard enough, you believe hard enough, God's just going to heal you of everything. And you're never going to struggle with your anxiety, depression, or your personality disorder ever again. And I've been at concerts of incredibly, you know, mainstream Christian artists that say like, those who are in here struggling with anxiety, you're healed. Everybody's healed. And I cringe at that because I'm like, we're offering people something God this side of heaven has never promised. And then the moment they struggle again, they get so desperate. And I think instead of saying, no, like God has not taken this from me. This is my thorn. I'm going to constantly struggle with this until he takes me to heaven. And I'm human just like you. I struggled with suicide. I attempted even, you know, just a little bit ago. And yet look at where I'm at. God hasn't benched me. I'm not you know, I'm still a full thriving person, in the hope that we can offer people. Because I think sometimes the biggest lie that people buy into is like, I'm good, I'm fixed, I'm fine. And then they have a setback and they just give up altogether because they had a setback. And it's no, we're human, we're fallen, we're going to have these setbacks, you know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And, you know, and then the other thing that I've been able to, you know, say it, spray it, put it out there, obey it, is the education I got on the enemy. You know, he's not going to whisper to my ear when I'm alone and say, you lost 40 followers on Instagram, you loser. What he whispered on that day was so believable, so enticing, just like Eve at the tree. I was like convinced. And that's how he operates. And we need to be wise as serpents and gentle as doves, but we need to be wise as serpents with him, because it's not going to be this overt, you know, neon sign that says you suck that he drops down from the, you know, from the sky. So
yeah, you're exactly right.
It was real believable. It was eerily believable.
I mean, well, look at what he told Adam and Eve in the garden. He told them some of the truth. Like, if you eat of the knowledge of good and evil, you will know stuff. Like, and that is true. They would know shame. They would know guilt. They would know all these things they had not known before. So he gave them half of the truth, you know?
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, and I think that's why it's so important, like you're saying, not to isolate yourself and to have those people you can call when you feel like you're going down that spiral, to say, these are the lies, or sometimes we don't know they're lies. These are the thoughts and the feelings I'm
Mm-hmm.
believing and feeling and thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Help me know, are these true? I think of like, have you watched the Hunger Game movies or read the Hunger Game books?
No.
Okay. Well, PETA like gets brainwashed by the other side. It's been years since I've read them, so I can't fully remember. But there's a part at the end where he has to constantly ask Jennifer Lawrence's character, "Is this true or false?" Because
Mm.
he's been so brainwashed that he automatically
Mm.
believes lies, and
Mm-hmm.
so you see her physically comforting him, and she's like, "That's false. Here's the truth."
Mm.
And
Mm.
I remember when I was going through my darkest days, having to at times ask my husband, like, these are the things I'm thinking and I'm feeling. Is this true or false? Like,
Right.
and he would have to say, those are false. This is the truth,
Right.
And so just
Right.
having those people. So
Yeah.
how do your boys know your entire story? And how have you
Yeah.
handled that with them? How old are you? Do you want to share all of
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
boys
Yeah.
are? Okay.
The 16 and 18.
Okay. Okay. And
So
any
teenage.
question I ask, you are welcome to not answer if you don't want to. So
No, I'm good.
okay.
I want you to ask something totally inappropriate.
Oh, well, don't
And
don't dare me. Don't dare make me laugh.
I'm just kidding. Okay. I'm just kidding. So the boys, people, yeah, I get asked that a lot as far as like, I went to a psychologist and I kind of got diagnosed with depression. What do I tell my kids? What don't I tell my kids? This is how I've operated. And I can say that this is how I've operated for 18 years now. So that kind of gives me hopefully a little bit of street cred. I'm not a parenting guru, but I have lived 18 years as a mentally afflicted parent. So
Yeah.
with that being said, we kept it from DJ and Andy. I am fortunately married to somebody that is a partner with me in this.
Yeah.
And so when I needed to go to a psychologist, or I needed to go on medicine that might have made me lethargic or caused me to gain weight, or, we just learned to parent around that with DJ and Andy here.
Yeah.
When they were old enough to understand and not be derailed by it. Because see, I still have to be the mom. I have to be the nurturer. Yeah. They can't be the parent because 100%. They think I'm, so when they were old enough to understand it and know that I can still be mom despite that, we brought them with me to when I spoke one time, and they got to hear it. And when I came home from that speaking gig, my one was like, "Hey, what's for lunch? We had mac and cheese yesterday. I'm sick of mac and cheese." And then my other one started to cry, and he said, "Why would you ever want to take your life? I don't understand that." And it was great. We talked about it.
Yeah.
The other thing, though, is that I get asked often as it pertains to parenting and kids is, are you afraid that your kids will genetically be, what's it called? Just genetically,
like
not disposed? Predisposed. Yeah. Thank you, Julie. Yeah. Julie got me. Predisposed.
We love Julie. Julie's Heather's assistant. We love Julie.
She's the brain, I'm the mouth. Yeah. Well, and I don't receive that. I would never say that. I would never assume that. No, I don't worry about my kids getting that.
Yeah.
Because I serve a God the generations do not have to be cursed all through the world.
Yeah.
This is the New Testament, and Jesus died for us, and we can be set free from things. And
and you're doing the hard work so that it can, stop with you. That's how I feel anyways. Like, because I'm coming from a generational line of it, and I'm like, I'm doing the hard work so it ends with me.
Right. And I just won't speak that. I just won't speak that. I don't claim that. I won't claim that. I won't even worry about it. I refuse. Look, the enemy has taken a lot from me. I am not going to let him take from my kids that this could be them. Heck no. That is not their identity. And I don't receive it.
I love that. I love it. I'm feeling all like powered up over here.
I get a little revved up about that one.
I love it. I'm like, let's go. Okay. So I just have to I'm like, so one of the things that you keep saying is mentally afflicted. You're not saying mentally ill.
Right.
On purpose. Tell me why.
Right.
Tell me why.
Okay. Mental illness is, in, from my vantage point,
Sure.
is loosely used
Okay.
to sometimes justify bad behavior.
Got you. Yep.
And I'm not doing that. I don't want any part of that. I would do anything to be set free from this. I don't get off on telling people, oh yeah, I can't today because I'm mentally ill. I'm not, I don't park in a spot with this as handicap because I'm mentally ill.
Yeah.
It is a thorn, but I'm going to be a good steward with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I tried to come up with a word that I thought would be the same, but not be that actual word. Cause
Yeah.
I still, it's been misused. It's been abused.
Yep.
It's been misunderstood.
Yep.
And so I say mentally afflicted.
I love it. I think I'm going to start using it now too, because you're exactly right. I remember I had a conversation with one of my really close friends several years ago, and she was trying, she didn't have a lot of context for mental health, mental illness. And so she was trying to wrap her mind around it and was just like, why are you using words like diagnosed and illness? Like, you're taking the responsibility off of yourself and you're excusing it. But that's how people view those words, mental illness, diagnosis. You're exactly right. Like, almost as crutches. Like, I can behave this way because I have an illness, you know? And I tried to explain to her, like, no, that's not the case. Like, for me, it's different. When I got diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, it was a relief to know something was happening to me that we could begin to fight against, that I could start getting tools in my tool belt to fight against. And so
Right.
I think you're exactly right. When people hear mental illness, they, start thinking, different things, whereas afflicted gives a whole new, I love that. I just caught up on that as you were talking, and I was like, there's got to be a reason why. So.
And I also like mental afflicted because it also includes, it's just a big overarching umbrella that under it can be official diagnosis given by professionals. But you can be a mentally afflicted person because you're in the Garden of Gethsemane and you're getting ready to go to the cross and your people are falling asleep and you're so full of angst and mental torture that you're sweating drops of blood. Okay, that's not a mental illness. That's not a mental diagnosis, but you are definitely afflicted in that hour.
Yeah.
And so that's another reason why, because I do think, people that lose somebody, they are suddenly, okay, I know someone that just suddenly lost their child. They are mentally afflicted.
Yep.
But not necessarily mentally ill.
Yeah. 100%.
And so, I try to use it for that reason too.
Yeah. No, that's 100% correct. And I think, people even going through 2020 who have never had any context for mental illnesses and now experiencing all this craziness, like, there's a lot of people now that are mentally afflicted, having to process through everything. And I think that's something, it's funny because there's a lot of people that tune in and listen and follow me that, have mental illness or are mentally afflicted. And then there's a lot of people that, are kind of on the fringe. Well, I don't have that stuff, so I don't know that I need. And I'm like, okay, everybody has mental health though. We all have mental health. We all have to be taking care of it because we're one step away from really experiencing some dark stuff, like 2019.
Right.
Funny, 2019, my brother committed suicide January 4th. And then my mother-in-law passed away September 5th, the day after my last son was born. And so that was a wild year for me. They're attesting to.
Sorry, my dogs.
No, they're attesting to my wild year. They know. But then, so that's why we walked through 2020. And I'm like, this wasn't so bad, guys. Come on. Like, my 2019 was hell.
Yeah,
but just,
bad.
But yeah, like, experiencing those dark seasons can produce mental affliction. I love that. So, talk to me then about your love for the church and how that's grown, because, you were trying to escape it, years ago. And then I'm sure the climb back into it was interesting. Mm-hmm. So talk to me a little bit about your love affair with the church.
Right. Well, I started
and church as a whole. Like,
yeah.
I know you love the church you're at now.
I love the church. I don't know, I think the church as a whole is interesting as far as how they perceive mental affliction. But that's not the soapbox that God's put me on. So I'm not gonna broach that subject with you. But the church to me is an essential for a mental comeback. You need the Bible, you need Christian counseling, and you need the church.
Now pause just for a second, because you said Christian counseling, because this is something that people are like, okay, well, I went and I saw like a nouthetic counselor, and I'll say all the things so you don't have to say it. And they gave me these verses, and then I read through Paul and Ephesians, and I had to define anger and mad. And now I just realized, okay, your face is telling me everything. So you don't mean like, you mean someone who is a licensed counselor who knows the brain and the emotions and can tell you what the beep is going on.
Well, it has to be, I see and have always seen a Christian therapist.
A person who is a Christian,
licensed, professional, synonyms, therapist, counselor, psychologist.
Right.
Okay. They have to be a Christian. Here's why. I am going to sit in your office and you are going to tell me how to not kill myself. Okay. You didn't create me. You weren't in the seclusion of my mother's womb when I was being knitted together. You aren't going to always be for me. You don't know me. You don't know the weapons that are being formed against me to help me not prosper. So I need you to be a mouthpiece for the Lord, who has also been trained with the brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is not even a hyphenated word. That's a compound word: Christian counselor, Christian therapy, Christian psychologist. And when I speak to secular crowds or individuals, that's what I say.
Yeah.
They can take it or leave it.
Yeah.
But listen, God made them too.
100%.
And if I'm going to send them to a counselor's office, I need to know God's in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, that being said, I also see a psychiatrist. I see a psychiatrist for medication, essentially. Psychiatrist appointments are not therapeutic. They're not cognitive. It's not, I'm sitting there and we're having a dialogue. It's, I'm assessing your brain, and I'm going to either give you a medicine, wean you off of medicine, change the dosage, or change the prescription.
Yeah.
It's medicinal.
Yes.
So they're not speaking into my life.
Yes.
So I'm more open with those doctors in the mental health field being secular or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they're looking at you mainly just from a physical, how is your body physiologically reacting to this?
Neurological, physiological. Yeah. So yeah, that's I've stuck to that, for 20 years now. I don't waver with that one.
Yeah, I love it. Did you ever, so for me, I've been on and off medication for the past 6 years. I initially did not need to be on medication, and I had my second child, which was a boy, and I relapsed. I mean, it was like worse than my first time around, and had to get on medication. And initially that was a struggle for me, but I did it. And I think just a lot of it had to do with the stigma of things. And so I've been on and off throughout the years. I think I'm finally kind of becoming comfortable with, like, this may be the rest of my life, and that's okay. This is not something to fight against. This is just something to accept, of like, it's like a vitamin. It's helping me. It's building, up the serotonin levels and stuff. And I think I've always, a lot of times when people talk to me, like, I have extreme anxiety and I'm on medication. And my next question is always, are you in counseling? Because I feel, this is my perspective, and I'd love to hear what your perspective is on it. But if it's just, you have extreme anxiety or depression and you're on some sort of medication, but you're not at all in any kind of counseling or therapy, then the medication in a sense does become a crutch. In my point of view, it's numbing what's happening. You're not getting to the root or the basis of what's really going on. Do you think I'm seeing that correctly, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, yeah, no, I think it's the opposite to what people don't say. And that is, so that I can get therapy, I got to be on some medicine, because it's all in vain. If you take a bipolar, suicide attempting me and put me in an office who's going to be a mouthpiece for the Lord to try to put me back together like the Scarecrow in the Wizard of Oz when he was scattered everywhere, I I've got to be able to have some sense of even keelness in my brain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, what you're putting in is not, it's barfing on barf. You know,
Yeah,
it's not gonna do anybody good. So I take the medicine so that in my therapy, I walk out better than when I went in.
Yeah. And what would you say to the people that are like, well, I did a couple months of therapy and I'm good now?
Yeah. No,
I do that all the time.
I want to give them a papao, which is what the Cubans say. It's for a spanking. I see that. I don't know which one I see more is those drive-by I got counselings or the I quit my medicine, I don't need my medicine. I see that junk all the time.
Yeah.
But I stick to what I just keep saying it. You need counseling, you need medicine, and let the Lord and the counselor determine when you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny as I've been sharing my story more and getting more open. I have a lot of wives who reach out to me and are like, hey, can you speak to my husband? And I'm like, absolutely. Like, if you're comfortable with that, as long as you're in the room or whatever, we'll Zoom or talk, whatever. And we'll do Zoom conversations. And so often it's mainly men. I just can't understand why God would allow this. And I've tried to pray myself out of it and attend church and Bible study my way. And I can't. I'm sure you have a lot of conversations with men. What do you tell them when they're like, for me, for some reason, it seems like men a lot of times cannot grasp the fact that they can't fix it. And that's one of the things that I deal with is like, you have to at some point fight to accept that this is what it is, you know?
Right. Well, I think, you know, for men, what's an encouragement to them is the cases of mental affliction and even suicide in the Bible, they were men.
Yeah.
And I don't say that to show that men are weak. I say that to show that it's normal for a man to have a mental affliction.
Wow.
It's not out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
I mean, Elijah and Moses, I mean, these are the greatest of the greats.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they wanted to die.
Yeah.
And so I would pitch it to a guy and be like, yo, listen, it happens to both genders.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
And I think that a dude has to get a diagnosis, because if he wants to be a fixer, well, he got to know what he's fixing.
Exactly.
If you aim at nothing, you will be sure to hit it. My dad used to say. So get a diagnosis. Listen, and you don't have to tell people.
No.
You don't have to. Listen, not every private crisis needs to be publicly shared.
No.
And I believe that there's a lot of men out there that if they could just get a diagnosis and privately with their wife, get on medicine and deal with it, they would be fine.
Yeah.
They would be fine.
Yeah. And be able to work through these things. Okay. So let's wrap it up a little bit, because I feel like we could talk all day. So I just have a few more questions. Tell me real quickly about your ministry, Wondherful, and what all you do. Wondherful.
All right. So I'm actually here in my Wondherful workshop, i.e. dining room. Julie and I commandeered my dining room because, let's face it, I suck at cooking. So why do I need one?
Yeah.
And we converted the dining room into a wonderful workshop where we do three things. As a matter of fact, when I'm done with you, we're actually going to get to work on this. We do three things out of the Wondherful workshop. We make a wonderful life box. Well, that is for anybody that has any kind of mental affliction and reaches out, or someone on behalf of them reaches out and says, could we get a wonderful life box for this person? They're free. What is in it? Well, what is in it is the essentials: church, Bible, journal. I put a church card. Because you can see ours online.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't care where they go to church, but I'm not going to assume that they have a church.
Yeah.
So I always include a church invite card so they can watch online or come to ours. But any church will do. But every single Wonderful Life Box has to have the essentials that I've had all my life to put me back together again: a Bible, a journal, and church. Then on top of that, because I get it, you know, that's pretty, I don't know. If you're not a Christian, especially, you're gonna be like, really? That's the Wonderful Life Box? That sucks.
Yeah.
So I make it fun, you know, and based on gender, age, even nationality. I will put in other little tricks and treats and tchotchkes to make it fun.
I love it.
And it has been awesome. I mean, the people that send us videos or pictures. I sent a Wonderful Life box to a Jewish lesbian.
I love it.
And she was crying. She was crying. She had someone video her opening it and was crying. And it just blessed my day.
When did you start this?
I've always been doing Wonderful Life boxes. Whenever I visit people in psych wards or hospitals for suicide or drug purposes, I always bring a Wonderful Life box. But my friend Julie was like, you should put it out there. And I was like, all right. Well, 250 boxes later.
That's crazy.
So the Wonderful Life box is for anybody who's struggling with wanting to give up. Then we started doing Wonderful Life bags because there's a lot of homeless in South Florida, and my youngest brother is one of them, and I just am very burdened for him. So that has the essentials: a Bible, a journal, and a Church by the Glades invite card. But instead of tchotchkes and tricks and treats, it has chapstick, it has toothbrush, body wipes, it has socks, lifesavers, lotion, it has a mask, it has beef jerky.
Is Julie showing?
Yeah, I'm looking. It has crackers, so we put in there things that homeless people need.
Yeah.
Then the last thing is a Choose Life coin. I'll grab it really quick.
This I've heard you seen, and this is exciting.
So this we just started doing.
Yeah,
because we recognize that when you go through addiction recovery, it's so commemorative when you've had a month of sobriety, 6 months of sobriety, and you show back up and you're given a coin.
Yeah.
And everybody celebrates that commemorative moment. Well, we were like, well, what if you tried to kill yourself? That's commemorative. That's commemorative and worthy of celebration if you're still alive.
Yeah.
So we put it out there that we are now sending Choose Life coins to anybody that has tried to give up, but they're still here, so that they have this.
I love that. I love it. And that's new, right? Isn't that newer? Okay. I love that. That's so powerful. So, I mean, if someone's listening today and they want to send a box or get a coin, do they just go to your website, wondherful.com?
Anything, any social media, just DM me.
Okay.
And we'll send one out. There's no questions asked.
And if you're only listening and not watching, it's like Wondherful, except her in the middle. So WONDHERFUL.com. Yeah.
Right.
So, all right. So just to finish this out here, Heather, what would you say to someone right now who's listening and is buying into the lies and they are really considering attempting suicide? And they're just at the end of the road. What would you say to someone who's listening?
Well, I have two answers. Number one is you need to get off this podcast right now and you need to call the Suicide Lifeline and let somebody know. You can't even go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
You need to do it right now. I know that you're listening or watching, and I know you got your phone nearby. You need to call the Suicide Lifeline, and you need to talk to somebody. Number two is you just need to know that that you can't take your life. You are the only one of you. And you will, in the timeline of humanity, you will leave a gaping hole that no other human will be able to fill.
Yeah.
So you're needed. And I know life sucks, and you look at yourself and you're like, no one needs me. And that's a lie. God needed you. He needed you enough to let you be born and live up to this moment to hear this podcast. And you're going to do great things, but you got to be here to do them.
I love it. And then what would you say to someone who who attempted and is alive, but feeling the guilt and the heaviness of attempting that?
That's a great question. And by the way, you are an amazing interviewer. Amazing. Like, I got, rest in peace, Larry King. But you could probably be the heir to the throne of that show.
Thank you. You're so sweet. I love it.
Totally killing it. Totally killing it. I would answer that question with a scenario that happened a few Thanksgivings ago. My youngest brother, my baby brother, is a heroin addict, and he's homeless right now. And I went to visit him at a homeless shelter on Thanksgiving Day. I brought him a pie. And we were sitting outside of my car talking, and he was just very discouraged because he's like, even if I could make a comeback, I have so many scars on my wrists from the needles and from cutting them. He's like, how do you go on with these horrible scars? And I said, Chris, listen, Jesus had scars. And I said, your scars can be your bitterness, or your scars can be your witness. And I think that whether we have physical scars on the outside from trying to take our life, or scars on the inside from trying to take our life, we're still here.
Yep.
So we're a witness that, yes, it can get really bad, but you can get through it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just keep like, it takes a lot to silence me, Heather, but you've done it numerous times. So I may be a great interviewer, but you are an incredible interviewee. So, but I will just say, you know, that's why I called this podcast Scar Stories, because our scars can become our stories. And it's funny, we were talking about this before, but you know, Brandy Wilson, you guys work together with Leading and Loving It, which is an organization for women in ministry. And she was talking about how, you know, when she went through her trauma, really having to take the time to kind of pull away, be by herself so that God could protect her voice in order to use her voice. And she wanted to speak out of her scars, not out of her wounds. And I think like when we attempt suicide or contemplate suicide or walk through a traumatic experience, like we have the opportunity to heal from that, so that when God says it's time, we can share that story and say, look what God did, so that we can then be the comfort to other people to say, look what God can do. Like, I'm what God did. Now let's look and see what God can do for you. And so, I just want to thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for this time. I've been close to tears like numerous. I know. If you're just listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, y'all need to stop and either go to my socials or YouTube and just watch it, because you're in for a whole new treat. Or you'll just think we're both psychotic. Doesn't matter. Either way.
Hey, we would be great. We'd be great roommates in a psych ward.
100%. I was thinking that. I was like, I may have found my spirit animal. Like, you could be my spirit animal. So, well, this was fun. We're going to have to do this again sometime, and, you know, maybe continue being friends if you'll let me. I don't know.
Yeah. I need your number. If we can be in that kind of a club, I'd love to get your number.
Girl, 100%. I'm going to stop recording in a second and give it to you, so not everybody and their mother has my number, because I'm not ready for that yet. But anyways, all right, guys, don't forget, check out Wondherful.com. Check her out on social media. She does this. One of my favorite things you do is sticky notes to self. Yep. And she writes these little sayings, and like, you're so good with the one-liners. I'm so jealous of the one-liners you come up with. But they're awesome little blips of truth. So follow her on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, social media.com. Get the boxes, the books, the coins, everything. But and then after you've obsessed over her, hop over to NicoleGolden.com or org. I'm org, NicoleGolden.org, and get my prayer journal. All right. Love you, fam. Thanks for joining in. Peace out.